Hornet 1, 3-ship CF-18, inbound for Canada Remember Our Heroes.
Hornet 1, report initial for runway 27.
Hornet 1, initial 27, let it go.
The first thing someone might notice about Canada and the United States is that they share the world's longest border, over 8,800 kilometers. The two countries have been more than just neighbors. They have worked together as allies for many common goals. The War of 1812 featured a clash between the fledgling United States and Canada under UK rule. Canada confederated in 1867, and since then the two countries have worked together through 2 world wars and many other military conflicts around the globe. Canadian and U.S. veterans who have served in combat together can give an inside story of how they have a special relationship shaped by serving together to protect our respective countries and freedoms that are often taken for granted.
My name is Malcolm Young. I'm a retired full colonel after 33 years of service in the Canadian Armed Forces. Canada and the U.S. have had a very unique military history, just like they've had a very unique neighborly history. Many Canadians have served in the U.S. Armed Forces, as an example as recent as Vietnam. Our Aboriginal citizens have the ability under treaty to turn around and be Canadian citizens, but yet serve in the American military and have done so for generations, starting with World War I to present day. And what we also have is we have the Americans who have served in the Canadian military, both in World War I and World War II. In both those conflicts, Canada was the early entrant to the war. The United States joined the war later, in some cases more than 2 years afterwards. Many Americans had a desire to want to turn around and participate in the fight early on, and so they crossed the border, they joined the Canadian military, and they served as Americans in a Canadian uniform. In some instances, those Americans later transferred back to American units once the United States had joined the conflict, as an example in World War II.
Sarah Eyre is a high school graduate who is interested in becoming a filmmaker.
Having met 2 World War II veterans and today a Iraq and Afghanistan veteran has impacted me in a lot of different ways. Just getting to talk to them about their stories and how being in the war has affected them throughout different generations and throughout their lives, and getting to hear their stories is really powerful. And I feel like, with family, sometimes you don't want to talk about some of the harder stuff, but through these interviews that I've gotten to hear what other veterans have to say about their time serving and how it's affected them and their stories and stuff.
My name is Eric Brandt, and for the last 2 years I've been traveling across Canada in a small van interviewing Canada's last remaining Second World War veterans. So started in Victoria, BC, and went all the way to St. John's, Newfoundland. I have the freedom to do anything I want, and that's literally because these men put their lives on the line for our freedom, basically.
The Ladies for Liberty travel internationally
to entertain veterans as well as the public in general.
Like right here in Canada.
It's wonderful, it's heaven, a special kind of heaven, but only when I'm near you.
I'm Wanda Martin with the Ladies for Liberty, and we have come to Canada 6 times now to honor your veterans as we honor our veterans in the United States. It is our honor to be here. We feel that every veteran that fought in World War II is to be honored, no matter where they might reside. My uncle, he fought in World War II. He was a sailor. I remember him, and I remember the war from him and his family. His daughters I ran around with, and so they kind of taught me a little bit about World War II. I just became a person that wanted to do something. I wanted to do something to commemorate that.
Angie Glotzbach is a member of the Ladies for Liberty.
So I've been to Canada several years to help celebrate the veterans during the air shows and different events. And I feel like each time it's like coming home to a family. We're all one, we're all part of the same world. I mean, we have veterans that all sacrificed and gave part of their life and something to the world. And just coming to Canada, it feels like coming home. I mean, I have a home in the United States, but I've made such great friends, and it just feels like family. I mean, the war was a horrible time for most, but you know, the music of the era, I think, really made people feel something good about it.
Jeanette Kays is a longtime member of the Ladies for Liberty.
When we sing to veterans, I'm hoping that we're bringing back some of their happiest memories. And the tough part is when you sing to somebody like that and you can see that you've touched a part and they start crying. Then I have to stop singing because I have to cry too. But I'm hoping that we just bring that little bit of joy to them. It's easy to say, thank you for your service. We all say that. What does it mean? The only thing I can do as a service is to bring some musical memories and joy to these people who gave so much.
Shoo, 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 baby, goodbye, goodbye. Your papa.
Somehow or another, I don't feel that Canada and the United States are two separate countries. I think of us as one people. I don't know why, I just do.
What was the name of the famed B-17 Flying Fortress that visited Canada for the first time in 2003? Was it Gambler's Luck, Enola Gay, Memphis Belle, or Sweet La Ronda? Coming up, a Canadian World War II veteran heads south to Las Vegas. The Memphis Belle was one of the few B-17s to complete 25 combat missions. The Belle was featured in a documentary and a Hollywood movie. Colonel Bob Morgan, the Memphis Belle's original World War II pilot, brought the famous bomber to the Canada Remembers International Air Show in 2003.
The bomber campaign in World War II was unique in the sense it was made up of two mission sets. The American Air Force took responsibility for the daytime bombing and fighter support on the bombing of Europe, and the British Air Force, supported by embedded Canadians, took responsibility for the nighttime bombing missions, and once again supported by night fighters, provided both by Canadians and in some instances some American squadrons, but primarily by British and Canadian squadrons.
Canadian and U.S. World War II veterans shared a stage together at a conference in Las Vegas. Matt Jolly is a professional announcer and an award-winning journalist.
And I want to welcome these guys because they know what it means to survive in a world where a financial downturn has just taken place. They know what it means to live in a world that is at war with a common enemy. They know what it means to rise above and to overcome adversity. And more importantly, they know what it means to rebuild a homeland that is in turmoil. These are all lessons that we can learn. And between them all, 275 years of life experience here today.
Cy Campbell served in the Royal Canadian Air Force in World War II on a Lancaster bomber crew.
Tail gunner on Lancaster bombers, member of the Royal Canadian Air Force. And as you can see today, he's a member of the Royal Canadian Legion. We're honored to have you here, Cy, as well as your family.
I just thought I was very lucky to be there, and I was the first Canadian that went down to that. I felt very, very honored. I was interested in sitting there with the two of them. I thought, well, I did my part, I did my best, and so did they.
Please welcome, if you will, Colonel Bud Anderson. There he is. You remember that guy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Colonel Anderson, the pilot of Old Crow, a triple ace in World War II, flew, of course, in Korea and in Vietnam, and he's here with us today.
My most exciting dogfight, I guess you would call it, a very successful one. In the spring of 1944, deep into Germany. This is at, by the way, at well above 25,000 feet. So we go head on with them. Nobody could get a shot. It was so quick. They string out like that, and we're going this way. And I look back, and they turn left. I thought they would go down and attack the bombers and then leave. But that meant to me they're after us. They had attacked us, and they decided they're going to get us. And we started a big left-hand turn up there at high altitude, right at the altitude where the Mustang can perform. With a two-stage, two-speed supercharger, we were in good shape. Fired another burst, and it hit him all over the center of the airplane. Wing root, cockpit, everything. He's going straight up now. And I quit firing and coasted right up to him. And the propeller was just windmilling. And I was right on his wing, just pulled up on this. I could see the grease in the wheel well and all the rivets closely. Cockpit was full of smoke. And from there, he just kind of rolled over like this from, I don't know, 28, 29,000 feet, and just went straight down. And all of a sudden, I see his shadow way out here, and I see this big smoke column. Must have been 2 miles long. And they finally merged together in a tremendous explosion. And it was an incredible feeling that, you know, that you'd survived. When we got into this one-on-one, it was pretty obvious somebody's going to die.
I want to turn the question now to Cy. I had lunch just now with your family. Here's a man that got all the way into the back end of a Lancaster bomber. And he grabbed a hold of those guns and he said, "Come on, boys, where are you?" A real Rambo up here. And he's the young one in the bunch, but I want to talk to you about that, because that had to be a real tough moment. You flew 30-plus missions in the back of a Lancaster. And for those of you who don't know, the average lifespan of a Lancaster gunner was what, 7 missions?
Yeah, pretty well.
When did you realize in training what you were up against, and what kept you going forward?
I guess when you think of it along that line, that you always thought that it was never going to happen to you. I think if you thought that it was going to happen to you, you would go, you'd run out the back door someplace, you know. But no, I don't think that really entered into it, really.
Our next honored guest down here at the very end is none other than Colonel Charles McGee. He's a Tuskegee Airman. Holds the record 409 combat missions, not just missions, 409 combat missions.
Well, I think it's important to know that we lived through, I call it a 10-year period that kind of gives everybody's life a focus. We came out of 10 years of depression.
Right.
When a company declared war, there was opportunity in the industry for work. There were those, all of us wanting to participate as we wanted to support our allies in Europe.
But it was nice meeting them. That trip to Vegas was really something. They really, really accepted me down there.
Thanks, everybody.
The United States Air Force Honor Guard Drill Team is a performance group featuring professionally choreographed sequences of show-stopping weapons maneuvers, precise tosses, and complex weapons exchanges. Requiring Pentagon approval, the first time this elite team was authorized to perform in Canada was 1945, 1958, 2001, or 2011. Coming up, the United States Air Force Honor Guard Drill Team. Since being founded in 1958, the United States Air Force Honor Guard Drill Team has toured bases and community events, primarily in the United States. This team first performed in Canada in 2011 at the Canada Remembers International Air Show.
And now, led by Master Sergeant Nathan Todd, the United States Air Force Honor Guard Drill Team!
Staff Sergeant Mark Frieda is a member of the United States Air Force Honor Guard Drill Team.
Well, sir, we do a lot of performances around the United States. We travel nationwide all the time. To get us international is a lot harder of a process. We have to get approval from our higher-ups, from the Pentagon, from all the very high-ranking people in the military. So for us to get international travel it's a long process. Luckily, we got the request in to come to this performance months in advance, or we had time to put it in. It doesn't happen very often. The last time we traveled international was to Europe. We had a tour in Europe a little over 4 years ago now. So this is a big step for us to do this a lot more often.
Our aircraft fly in four-ship formations, performing individual maneuvers, yet still...
Senior Airman Chris Martinez serves as a member of the United States Air Force Honor Guard Drill Team.
I think a lot of us knew that we were actually performing for the vets here in Saskatoon. Every single time that we got a chance to do any performance for any type of veteran, doesn't matter for what country, it's definitely an honor because we share the same type of relationship that they share with their other people that they were working with at that time. So it's always a patriotic type venue that we love to do and represent. Doesn't matter where at. It's always something that we look forward to. Especially after our performances. We get to talk to them and listen to their stories and what they went through. It's definitely an honor to do performances and exhibitions and shows anywhere we get a chance to do, especially for veterans.
Senior Airman Jimmy Pryor is also a member of the United States Air Force Honor Guard Drill Team.
I would thank any veteran that I ever see. I might even salute them because it's just the respect that I have for them. They paved the way for us to be able to do what we do today. Because without them, have the freedoms and liberties that we do have, we wouldn't have.
As one unit. While keeping complete faith in their women, notice how each member will blindly toss their weapon.
To commemorate the combined Canadian and U.S. unit Special Service Force that served in World War II, a highway connecting Lethbridge, Alberta to Helena, Montana was renamed in what year? 1949, 1958, 1999, 2001. Coming up, World War II Special Ops veterans. To honor the 1st Special Service Force and their achievements in World War II, sections of Highway 4 in Alberta and Interstate 15 in Montana were named the 1st Special Service Force Memorial Highway in 1999. During World War II, the 1st Special Service Force was made up of Canadian and U.S. soldiers who earned a reputation as an elite commando unit that was nicknamed the Devil's Brigade by the Germans.
Throughout our history, both Canada and the U.S. have had special forces work together, but in World War II, in the early 1940s, we established a joint unit called the 1st Special Service Force. It was combined of Canadians and Americans who had a common training program, which was unique for two militaries to come together. They wore common uniforms, and they served together as a joint unit under a joint command structure. Special forces are part and parcel of every military because they perform unique missions that the standard conventional unit cannot do.
A Canadian soldier, Jack Callowhill, served with Special Service Force in Italy during World War II.
And we were called a haywire outfit, because we didn't do things the way it was supposed to be done according to Army regulations. So that's what started, actually, that's why they started the Special Forces. It's what they needed, was something different. We had to learn all the American weapons. We didn't know that. And all the training, by the time we got everybody through with it, it took about 2 or 3 months. Everybody was melded into you couldn't tell an American or a Canadian.
Orville Middleton served with both Canadian and U.S. forces during World War II.
You knew that you were out of school, and you were just about 19 or 20, you would get your call. Nobody wanted to be a ground gunner from the Air Force. I don't know why I wanted that. It wasn't until a long time after that I realized it, because I liked shooting pheasants, and I thought it would be great shooting the German aircraft. I forgot that they shoot back. Yeah.
If you were an air defense gunner, you could be perceived as being a sitting target. Why? Because you were in a fixed position with no ability to actually move from your location, because your purpose was to defend against enemy air threat. And of course, during the day, you were visible to the German aircraft, and therefore would be strafed by German fighter bombers or bombed. And then also in the evening, when you engaged German bombers or other German aircraft, the tracers would create a signature of your location, and therefore once again susceptible to bombing or strafing. And so by having to stand and defend, you risk the chance of being a casualty as a result of that.
The first worst memory, I think, was when first time I shot in action, there was tracers coming out of my gun. Well, that's fine for target practice. It scared me. I shut my gun down. And of course, when the raid was over and the commanding officer wanted to see me, why did you shut your gun down? Who'd want to shoot tracers? That's like asking somebody to shoot me. But there's the odd one, they still left the tracers in the gun. And a lot of gunners got killed.
Now, there is unique differences between both American rations and Canadian/British rations. And for the Canadians who deployed, especially with the 1st Division, early on in the war to the UK, with the UK being under rationing, the food that the Canadian military and British military received was not of the highest quality. When the Americans arrived, they brought with them large stocks of commodities and brought rations which the Canadians were much more familiar with from North America. And then when they moved into Sicily, Italy, and Northwest Europe, the field rations were different. There was things in the American field rations which were vastly better than the British and Canadian rations. They got chocolate bars and things of that nature. And so those are all morale boosters when you're a soldier. You want to make sure that you get something good to eat, know you're getting paid, got a good leader and a good mission.
Here I am in the Army, and we can, especially the American Army, man, you never seen anybody fed like that. Gee. There's at the end of the table, there's a great big can there. You can go and fruit juice, lemon juice, orange juice, and all kinds, and food. Oh.
Jim Summersides, a Canadian soldier, served with Special Service Force during World War II.
One of my favorite stories is our meal consisted of M&V, meat and vegetable stew. It had a nice thick coating of fat floating around it. Your bread was hardtack. It was about 3 inches in diameter, about a ½ an inch thick. And if you dropped it on your toes, you'd break them. The first meal that we got when we got up to the base camp for Special Service Force was canned chicken, white bread, margarine that you could spread, coffee that was brewed, and we had a cup for it. And you could get all the carnation milk and white sugar you wanted in that cup of coffee. And fruit cocktail for dessert. Man, oh man, we had it so good. The shelling was pretty heavy. And the head scout said to me, I think we better get down, Red. And we got down, but when we got down, we changed positions. This shell hit just inside the lip. Must come over on. I had quite an angle hit there. And when it exploded, it buried both of us. First thought was, I'm all right. Where's Paul? So, thought Paul was buried worse than I was. But they got him out. They got him to the hospital. How they got him, I don't know. But he died 5 days later.
Well, Eisenhower had asked for us because they were having problems in Italy. And truthfully, the Americans didn't have troops properly trained for the mountains. And that's exactly what we're in.
Colonel Fredericks was responsible for the creation of the 1st Special Service Force. It was his principles and his ideals that led to both the formation of the training program, the selection program, and ultimately giving operational advice to the chain of command as to how the Special Service Force could be used against the German forces starting in Sicily and Italy and later on in Europe.
Frederick was asked to figure out what to do in this place where it was a lot of fence, and it was the entrance to the Leary Valley, which is the main road up to Rome goes through, and up into Casino, and a lot of fence was the key mountain.
The Italian campaign was, to be honest with you, a hard slog. Both Canadian and American forces invaded Sicily in 1943 and then deployed divisions of soldiers throughout the Sicily and Italy campaign. It was known as the Campaign of the Rivers and the Campaign of the Mountains.
So he figured out a way going. The Americans had tried, I think 3 times, and they never got anywhere. They never even got the troops back that went up. They couldn't get back down.
In some instances, especially with mountain operations, it's not that easy to turn around, climb a mountain, get to the top, and then destroy the enemy position. On the Mont La Defensa in 1943, the 1st Special Service Force was successful in its first mission in seizing the German positions on top of that mountain. And how they did it was they climbed it by night and attacked at dawn on the second day. To climb a mountain unassisted with very little climbing equipment as we would know it today, and to get hundreds of soldiers from the bottom of that mountain in the dark hours to the top successfully without being seen or heard by the Germans, and still to be able to achieve the act of surprise in their morning attack was at that point in time in the war an unheard of accomplishment.
So we went around the base of the mountain and up into the trees, and actually sat there one whole day, right underneath the Germans. And we're behind the German lines. And then that night they had a big artillery barrage, about 900 guns. It was the biggest one in the war up till then. And the British were supposed to go on another mountain And the Italians were now on our side, and they had another, and neither one of them made the top. We did. But we ended up, while they were doing the artillery barrage, we had put ropes in to climb the cliff. And now remembering that we're back behind the German line, so we had to be very quiet. But we got to the top just about dawn breaking. And all hell broke loose then. And it took 2.5 to 3 hours, and we took the mountain. It took about 5 days to consolidate the whole thing, but in the meantime, when we're up there, we're getting mortars and thrown at us. We lost more men that way than we did on the actual assault. But actually, it was 81 killed and over 300 wounded, and that decimated our regiment. And then by that time, I got hit on the second day with mortar shells. Canadians didn't get very many medals. And we did have, I think it was approximately 75 silver stars I got from the Americans, and I forget how many bronze stars, but the Americans got what they call their combat infantryman's badge, which is a unit citation. And they have a little medal that you get with a rifle on it. And of course the Americans got it. And the Americans were in the unit were a little upset, why don't the Canadians get it? Well, this is an American thing.
They said those guys, hey, had to go through what we went through. What makes us any different now? And they would not put up their combat infantry badge until we qualified. And that was 7, 8 years ago. And then they all come out of the woodwork, put them up. Because, hey, we were one unit, not two.
In 2013, a mobile memorial display was launched to educate people about the terrorist attack that cost thousands of lives at New York's World Trade Center. When did this exhibit first visit Canada? Was it 2014, 2015, 2017, or 2019? Coming up, a Canadian joins the U.S. Armed Forces following the 9/11 attack. In 2013, a 9/11 memorial display was launched by the Stephen Siller Tunnel to Towers Foundation. This 9/11 memorial display first came to Canada in 2015, appearing at the Canada Remembers International Air Show after traveling directly from New York.
While the events of 9/11 were a direct attack against the homeland of the United States, nations from all around the world came together to fight the common enemy in terms of terrorism, both in the form of Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and ISIS, as we now see. The conflicts in both Afghanistan and Iraq were the opportunity both for the American military and the Canadian military to work together, as they have done so in the past. There are numerous examples of Americans and Canadians serving together. Throughout Canadian military history, there are many examples of First Nation Canadian citizens who have served in the U.S. military. Under treaty, they're able to do so without having to attain American citizenship. And so Canadian First Nation citizens have joined the U.S. military in all branches, from World War I to present day, fighting in World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq. And so they continue to have and exercise that right under treaty.
Aaron Ledoux, a member of the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation, joined the United States Army after the 9/11 terrorist attacks and served in both Iraq and Afghanistan.
I am medically retired U.S. Army paratrooper, Ranger qualified. 9/11 affected me personally. I lost a friend there, so that's why I joined. I just wanted to chase down the people that killed my friend.
In response to September 11th, the United States called upon other NATO countries and other nations around the world who are not part of NATO to join them in the cause of finding and destroying the terrorists that committed that act, both on that day and then collectively throughout the ongoing conflicts. The Americans have led coalitions of multinational militaries and as well as redevelopment initiatives in each of the countries where terrorism has had a significant impact.
I know that Canada did have forces serving over there, but they were SF, Joint Task, PPCLI. I wasn't in there yet, but I would have to go that route, right? So I joined the American Army because I know that I had motivation to move. My biggest inspiration was Stanley LaFond. He served both in the Canadian Army and he served in the American Army. He served in Korea, and God thank his soul that he survived Vietnam. Kelly Wolf, our chief, he's a big man and he carried a big gun. And he needs to be acknowledged for everything that he's done. I was told by my first sergeant that you're Cree, you're Viking. And it was like I was in the WWII. I was the Ultimate Warrior. I was the only Canadian. I was one of the first Canadians probably to go over. Iraq was the first place. So that was OIF. Operation Iraqi Freedom. To go into a place like that and to know that some of the people that you were with a couple months before are gone. It's horrible. People that you'll never see again. You hope there's a heaven. When you go into stuff like that, Afghanistan, I still think of, God, my best friends, laughing and joking, and then gone. They're like, gone. My friends, like Mike Schaefer. Like me and him, like we were wrestling around and we were out. Why not me? Afghanistan is the real deal. Everything starts with infantry. And those are the people that actually walk the ground, do the business, handle it. So there's no difference. There's a brotherhood there. And that's what I wish that people knew, because PPCLI is the same thing as the United States Infantry. Would I do it again? 100%. 110%. I would do anything to protect the freedoms that we have.
I know a lot of the kids that joined up with me, they didn't come back. The whole class I graduated with.
I often said that if a guy wasn't afraid, and there were some that didn't seem to be, if he wasn't afraid, he was crazy.
I know of one American who was wounded, and he insists up till today that he would have died if it hadn't have been for this Canadian guy alongside him who saved his life by fixing him until they got him to the hospital. That's the spirit of the Special Forces, you know.
I want somebody to benefit from what we are doing to educate them to the fact that war is hell.
We had young men that got into the war. They went to Canada to get into the war, to go over there and help Britain. And then once Pearl Harbor was attacked, our young men rushed to the recruiting offices. I mean, in swarms. And there was just that will to do it, to help our country.
It's extremely important that Canada remembers our heroes, but we also need to remember that heroes come in many forms. When we think about military conflict, we think about the young men and women who go off and serve. Sadly, many of them do not come home. Many of them do. But each and every one of them pays a price, whether it's the form of being a casualty or being a wounded soldier, either a mental or physical wound. But we should never forget the other heroes who live amongst us, and that's the families of our military. Because the men and the women of our armed forces are our heroes, but their families are definitely our heroes.
I'd like to thank you for your service that you did for the country.
Oh,
and
you're welcome.
Sincerely to see, because I mean, I'm so lucky to have grown up and been born in Canada, and it's because of people like you that it's as great as it is.
And that's really taught me to be appreciative of what I have, to what we have in Canada, the amount of freedom we have, and not take anything for granted, and thank those that have sacrificed their time and their lives basically for the service of our country.
I think everybody should take one moment and listen to the story of one of those veterans. Just let him talk to you, if he can, if he will. Let him explain one portion of what he was there for. You learn so much from them.
I think we should be really, really thankful that we are free and we have such a fabulous country. I'm very, very proud to be a Canadian.
When we go abroad and go to Canada, we love those veterans exactly the way we do the veterans at home. They fought the same way, had the same feelings, left the same people to fight for the freedom that we enjoy today. So they're very, very close to our heart, and we love to sing these songs because they come alive.
I don't want the youth today to forget. I want them to remember. I want them to be like when we visited Normandy and I'd see teenagers lining up to dance with the veterans.
That's why we fight. And that's why we care. We didn't care about ourselves. We cared about other people being able to be free.
While you're away, oh, please remember me when you return. You'll find me waiting here.
In 2019, Charles McGee turned 100 and was promoted to Brigadier General. With an audience of 200 million, Charles helped flip the coin prior to the kickoff of Super Bowl 54. Orville Middleton helped liberate Nazi concentration camp survivors and returned to Canada to prosper in business. He purchased an abandoned bridge in Saskatchewan to preserve its historical significance. Cy Campbell received the Distinguished Flying Cross, returned to Canada to raise a family. He continues to meet with students and has appeared in numerous Canada Remembers documentaries. Jim Summersides took the salute with the Governor-General of Canada and read the Act of Remembrance in Italy in 2019. He finally received his Special Service Force citation worn by the U.S. soldiers he served with. Jack Callowhill received his Special Service Force citation along with his friend Jim Summersides. Both have regularly attended reunions for Special Service Force. Only a few members of that force still survive. Bud Anderson had a documentary made about his amazing Messerschmitt encounter. He has shared his harrowing stories with thousands. Aaron Ledoux has returned to civilian life and is helping to raise his son in the traditions of the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation. He continues to stay in touch with the many American soldiers he served with in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Ladies for Liberty continue to entertain veterans in care homes, air shows, and other events all over the globe.
For more information, please visit CanadaRemembers.net.